My name is Heidi Johnson, and at 70 years old, I never thought I would be completely invisible to my own children. Last year, my birthday came and went without a single call or text from any of my 3 kids. They found time to post vacation photos, work celebrations, and even what they had for lunch online, but apparently couldn't spare 30 seconds for their mother. What happened next changed everything between us. Before I tell you my story, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself. I had been married to my husband Harold for 42 wonderful years before he passed away 3 years ago. Together we raised 3 children while I worked full-time as a nurse at Memorial Hospital. Those years were difficult, but fulfilling. Every day I would wake up at 5 in the morning, prepare breakfast for everyone, pack lunches, and then head to my 12-hour shift. Harold worked as an insurance adjuster, which meant he often traveled. So the bulk of child-rearing fell on my shoulders. But I never complained. They were my world. Jackson, my oldest, is 45 now. He works as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown. He married Amanda 20 years ago, and they have 2 teenagers, Lily and Thomas. Jackson was always the responsible one growing up. He never gave us trouble, got straight A's, and went to college on a partial scholarship. I was so proud when he bought his first house, even though Harold and I had to contribute $30,000 toward the down payment. Jackson promised to pay us back, but that never happened. Then there's Sophia, my middle child. She's 42 and works as a marketing executive for a cosmetics company. She's been divorced for 5 years now from her husband Greg. They have 1 child, my granddaughter Emma, who's 12. Sophia always had expensive taste, even when we couldn't afford it. I remember working double shifts for months to buy her the designer prom dress she wanted, while other parents were shopping at department stores. When Sophia went through her divorce, I loaned her $60,000 for legal fees. She assured me it was temporary, just until the settlement came through. The settlement did come through along with the house and a generous alimony, but my loan was never mentioned again. My youngest is Daniel, 38, always the dreamer of the family. He jumped from interest to interest growing up, never quite finding his footing until he got into technology. Now he's what they call a tech entrepreneur. He married Lisa 4 years ago, and they don't have children. Daniel's business ventures have been a roller coaster. 3 years ago, just after Harold passed, Daniel came to me with an exciting business opportunity. He needed just $85,000 to secure some important patents. He showed me projections of millions in returns. How could I say no to my baby boy? That was the first of several investments I made in his companies. Birthdays were sacred in our household. Harold made sure of that. He believed that celebrating the day someone you love came into the world was essential. He would plan elaborate surprises, saving all year sometimes for special gifts. When the kids were young, we had themed parties with homemade cakes and decorations. I would stay up all night to prepare. As they got older, we transitioned to nice dinners and meaningful gifts. Harold always insisted that no matter what, we acknowledge each family member's special day. After Harold died, everything changed. The weekly Sunday dinners stopped first. Everyone was too busy. Then the regular phone calls dwindled. Jackson was swamped with clients. Sophia was dealing with work deadlines. Daniel was traveling for business opportunities. I understood they had lives, so I tried to stay connected. I called them weekly scent care packages with homemade cookies and family photos offered to visit them instead of having them come to me. But there was always some reason why the timing wasn't right. As my 70th birthday approached, I felt hopeful. 70 is a milestone after all. I thought surely they would make an effort. I dropped hints in our infrequent conversations. "It's not every day your mother turns 70, I would say with a light laugh. "I wonder what it will feel like to start my 8th decade," I mentioned to Sophia. To Daniel, I reminisced about how his father had surprised me for my 60th with a family trip. The last conversations I had with each of them before my birthday gave me hope. Jackson said, "We should definitely do something, Mom." Sophia mentioned I might have some time that weekend. Daniel told me, "Turning 70 is a big deal. We'll see what we can do." I went to sleep the night before my birthday, feeling excited for the first time in months. Maybe this would be the moment that brought my family back together again. I woke up early on May 12th, my 70th birthday. The morning light streamed through my curtains as I got out of bed with more energy than I'd felt in months. I put on my favorite dress, the blue one with small white flowers that Harold always complimented. I applied makeup carefully, something I rarely bothered with since living alone. I even put on the pearl earrings Harold had given me for our 40th anniversary. Then I made myself a special breakfast, blueberry pancakes, with real maple syrup Harold's recipe. I set the table for one, placed a small vase with fresh daisies from my garden in the center, and sat down to eat my phone positioned next to my plate. I kept expecting it to ring. Surely Jackson would call first thing, always the early riser. Or maybe it would be Sophia calling on her way to drop Emma off at school. Or a text from Daniel, who usually stayed up late working. But the phone remained silent as I ate my pancakes, which grew cold as I checked the screen every few minutes. The morning stretched on. I watered my plants. I sorted through some old photographs. I rearranged the living room furniture, something I'd been meaning to do for weeks. All the while, I kept my phone in my pocket, the volume turned all the way up. They're just busy, I told myself. They'll call soon. Maybe they're planning something special and don't want to spoil the surprise. By noon, my phone had finally started to buzz with birthday wishes, just not from my children. My friend Dorothy called. So did 3 former colleagues from the hospital. My neighbor Frank brought over a homemade carrot cake. Even my mail carrier Tim, who knew me from years of friendly exchanges, wished me happy birthday and handed me a card along with my mail. 70 looks good on you, Mrs. Johnson, he said, with a kind smile. I thanked him warmly, but as soon as I closed the door, tears welled in my eyes. The afternoon crawled by. I called each of my children, but none answered. Jackson's phone went straight to voicemail. This is Jackson Johnson. I'm with clients. Leave a message. I didn't. Sophia's phone rang 4 times before her voicemail picked up. I started to leave a message but stopped halfway through. What would I say? Hi, honey, it's Mom. Just wondering if you remembered I was born 70 years ago today. Daniel didn't even have a personalized greeting, just the automated voice saying the number wasn't available. As evening approached, I reluctantly prepared dinner for myself. A small chicken breast, some roasted potatoes, green beans from last summer that I had frozen. I opened a bottle of wine Harold and I had been saving for a special occasion. Well, turning 70 alone is certainly special, I said aloud to my empty kitchen, attempting humor to mask the pain. I ate slowly, checking my silent phone between bites. After dinner, I found myself doing something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do, checking social media. Harold never understood these platforms, but I had created accounts to see photos of my grandchildren. I logged into Facebook first. Jackson had posted 3 hours earlier about a business lunch with a valued client. There were photos of expensive-looking steaks and glasses of whiskey. He had time to photograph his food, but couldn't call his mother. Sophia's Instagram showed she had gone shopping. She posted pictures of bags from expensive stores and a new pair of shoes that probably cost what I lived on for a month. The caption read, "Sometimes a girl just needs to treat herself. Self-care deserve it." Apparently self-care didn't include caring for your mother on her birthday. Daniel's Twitter was full of posts about his latest business venture. One tweet particularly stung. "Taking time today to appreciate what matters most in life. Connections and opportunities. Blessed entrepreneur." Connections, just not connections to family, it seemed. But what hurt more than their posts were the other things I discovered. Jackson had posted a loving tribute to Amanda for their anniversary 2 days earlier, with a caption about never missing an opportunity to celebrate loved ones. Sophia had thrown an elaborate birthday party for her dog, complete with a pet-friendly cake and party hats. There were 23 comments, and she had responded to every single one. And Daniel had somehow found time to attend a tech conference, posting photos with celebrities and business leaders. I put my phone down and stared at the wall. Had I done something wrong? Were they punishing me for some maternal failure I couldn't recall? I racked my brain trying to think of any reason they would collectively ignore me like this. Maybe they were planning a surprise for the weekend. Maybe there was a card in the mail that hadn't arrived yet. Maybe. I went to bed alone that night, clutching an old family photo taken at Jackson's high school graduation. Harold stood proud in his suit, his arm around my waist. The 3 kids surrounded us, all smiles and optimism. Where had those children gone? As I drifted off to sleep, tears dampened my pillow and the silence of my phone on the nightstand seemed to grow louder by the minute. I gave them one more day, one more chance to make it right. Perhaps they were coordinating something special, I reasoned. A belated celebration, a surprise visit. I spent the day after my birthday, cleaning my already clean house, preparing guest rooms that would remain empty. I baked cookies, my famous chocolate chip ones that the kids had always fought over. They grew stale on the cooling rack. 3 days after my birthday, my phone finally pinged with a text from Sophia. "Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry I missed it. Work has been crazy. We'll call soon." No explanation, no real apology, not even a question about how I'd spent the day or if I was okay. 7 words that took 10 seconds to type sent, 72 hours late. I read it over and over, trying to extract some warmth or genuine regret from the pixels on my screen. There was none to find. When I couldn't stand the silence anymore, I called Jackson. To my surprise, he answered, "Mom, hi. I'm kind of in the middle of something." His voice was distracted, the background noisy with office sounds. "I just wanted to check in," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I didn't hear from you on my birthday." There was a pause then. "Oh man, was that this week? I'm so sorry, Mom. I've been swamped with clients. This new account I'm working on is huge. Can I call you back later?" He never did. Daniel was the worst. When I finally reached him, he said, "Wait, wasn't your birthday next month? I could have sworn it was in June. We had celebrated my birthday in May for his entire 38 years of life." The pain took physical form. I couldn't sleep, lying awake, replaying memories and wondering what I had done to deserve this treatment. I lost my appetite, food turning to ash in my mouth. My neighbor Frank noticed I had lost weight when he saw me collecting my mail. "You okay, Heidi? You don't look well." I assured him I was fine, just fighting a minor bug. The truth was too humiliating to share. As days turned to weeks, I began to see a pattern I had been blind to before. This wasn't an isolated incident. Last Christmas, all 3 children had begged off our traditional family gathering, citing various commitments. Jackson had taken his family to a ski resort. Sophia had gone to a spa retreat. Daniel and Lisa had spent the holiday with her family. I had eaten ham alone, watching old movies Harold and I used to enjoy together. Thanksgiving had been similar. Easter passed without acknowledgement. My calls went unanswered, more often than not, returned days later, with brief conversations dominated by their problems and achievements, rarely inquiries about my life. One afternoon, while organizing my home office, I came across my financial records. Harold had always been so meticulous about our finances, keeping everything in labeled folders. Since his death, I had tried to maintain his system, but admittedly with less rigor. As I sorted through bank statements, I noticed something troubling. Large withdrawals I couldn't immediately account for. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 15,000 somewhere else. I spread the statements across my dining table, creating a timeline of transactions. The pattern was clear once I looked for it. In the 3 years since Harold's death, substantial sums had left my accounts with alarming regularity. I pulled out my checkbook register and matched the withdrawals to entries. Loan to Jackson for Thomas's private school tuition. Money for Sophia's attorney. Investment in Daniel's new tech venture. The next day, I met my friend Dorothy for lunch at our favorite cafe. After 40 years of friendship, she could tell immediately something was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Heidi," she said as she slid into the booth across from me. I confided everything: the forgotten birthday, the pattern of neglect, and the financial discoveries. Dorothy listened without interrupting, her face growing stormier by the minute. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Honey, I'm going to say something you won't like hearing. Your children are exploiting you. They're using you as an ATM while giving nothing back. Not even basic respect." "They're just busy," I said automatically, the excuse I'd been making for years. Dorothy shook her head. "No one is too busy to call their mother on her 70th birthday. No one." When I returned home, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through the boxes of cards and letters I'd received from my children since Harold's death. Birthday cards with handwritten notes: "Mom, I hate to ask, but could you help with Lily's braces? About 3,000 should cover it." Mother's Day cards: "You're the best mom ever. By the way, the business needs a small cash infusion." Christmas cards: "Wishing you joy and peace. Also, Emma wants to go to summer camp with her friends." Each request had been disguised as concern for my loneliness. "You should use your money to enjoy life, Mom. How about helping us with this down payment so we can have you over to our new home more often? Or, this investment will pay off so well I can take care of you in your old age. Or, If you help with this tuition, we'll bring the kids to visit more. The visits never materialized. The repayments never came. The promised care remained theoretical. I decided to conduct a thorough audit of my finances. What I found shook me to my core. In the 3 years since Harold's death, I had loaned my children over $175,000. None of it had been repaid. My retirement savings, once robust, had been significantly depleted. If this continued, I would have nothing left within 5 years. The breaking point came unexpectedly. I was at the grocery store in the cereal aisle when I saw them, a mother and adult daughter, shopping together, laughing, the daughter's arm linked through her mother's. They were examining a box of granola heads bent together in consultation. Such a simple moment, but it cracked something inside me. I abandoned my cart and hurried to my car, where I sat sobbing uncontrollably for 20 minutes. That evening, alone in my kitchen, painful memories surfaced with new clarity. Jackson calling for financial advice, then pivoting to his own needs when I mentioned feeling lonely. Sophia visiting but spending the entire time on her phone except when discussing her financial struggles. Daniel promising to set up video calls with his busy schedule, only to ghost me until his next business idea needed funding. Each memory was another piece of evidence in a case I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. My children weren't just forgetful or busy. They had reduced me to a resource to be tapped, an obligation to be managed with minimal effort. The truth sat heavy in my chest, making it hard to breathe. How had we come to this? The Monday after my financial discovery, I made an appointment with Harold's longtime financial advisor, Martin Williams. I brought all my records and laid them out in his office, explaining the situation with as much composure as I could muster. Martin reviewed everything carefully, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Heidi," he said finally, looking up over his reading glasses, "I need to be very clear with you. Your retirement savings have been significantly depleted. If these withdrawals continue at the current rate, you'll outlive your money. That's not supposed to happen. Harold made sure of it." The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. Harold had been so careful, so diligent in preparing for our future. He'd worked extra hours, invested wisely, avoided unnecessary luxuries. Also, we could enjoy our golden years without financial worry. And in just 3 years, his careful planning was unraveling because I couldn't say no to our children. That evening, I went through Harold's belongings, something I hadn't been able to face since his death. In his nightstand drawer, I found a journal I didn't know existed. Harold had never been one to write down his thoughts, or so I thought. The journal began 6 months before his cancer diagnosis. As I turned the pages, I discovered entries about his concerns for our children's financial habits and sense of entitlement. Spoke with Jackson today about his spending. One entry read, "He and Amanda live far beyond their means. I worry they expect Heidi and me to be their safety net." Tried to discuss budgeting but was met with defensiveness. He's 42 years old. When will he take responsibility? Another entry, Sophia called, asking for money again. 3rd time this year. Her salary should more than cover her expenses, but she seems incapable of distinguishing wants from needs. Heidi wants to help, but I fear we're enabling harmful patterns. The final entries, written when Harold knew he was dying, broke my heart. "My greatest fear isn't death," he had written in shaky handwriting. "It's what will happen to Heidi when I'm gone. Our children have come to see us as a source of funding, not as parents to be cherished. I've tried to correct this, but I fear it's too late. Heidi's nurturing heart will make her vulnerable to their demands. I can only hope she finds the strength to love them by letting them stand on their own." Tucked inside the journal was a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter Harold had written to me to be read after his death. His sister had given it to me at the funeral, but in my grief I had put it away, unable to face his final words. Now, with trembling hands, I read it. "My dearest Heidi," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and for that I'm so sorry. We should have had more years together. There's so much I wanted to tell you, but most importantly, I want you to know that you were the great love of my life, and not a day went by that I didn't thank whatever cosmic luck brought you to me. I need you to know something else. Something difficult. Our children are not the people we raised them to be. Somewhere along the way, despite our best efforts, they learned to take rather than give. I blame myself for not being stricter, for working so much, for wanting to give them everything we didn't have. Heidi, my love, you must be stronger than I was. You must be strong enough to let them stand on their own. It will hurt. They will make you feel guilty. They might even say cruel things. But true love sometimes means allowing people to face the consequences of their actions. Remember that you deserve respect, consideration, and love. Don't accept less even from our children, especially from our children. I love you eternally, Harold. I sat on our bed, the bed we had shared for 40 years, and wept until there were no tears left. The truth of Harold's words resonated with everything I had been discovering. That night I pulled out our old photo albums, tracking the evolution of our family through images. The chubby-cheeked babies who gazed at me with utter adoration. The gap-toothed children proudly displaying school projects I had helped with. The teenagers rolling their eyes but still accepting goodnight kisses. And then the adults increasingly absent from family photos, increasingly present only when needs arose. The next day I called my sister Barbara in Arizona. We had drifted apart after she moved, but she had always been brutally honest with me sometimes, painfully so. After catching up briefly, I told her everything. "I'm not surprised," she said flatly. "I tried to tell you this was happening when I visited after Harold's funeral. Remember, you defended them, said they were grieving too." "I didn't want to see it," I admitted. "Well, you're seeing it now. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could formulate a plan, my body made a decision for me. The stress of the revelations, combined with months of poor sleep and neglected self-care, resulted in my collapse. My neighbor Frank found me unconscious in my garden and called an ambulance. I spent 3 days in the hospital with exhaustion, dehydration, and dangerously elevated blood pressure. The hospital notified all 3 of my children as my emergency contacts. None visited. Jackson sent a text. "Hope you're feeling better, Mom. Swamped at work but thinking of you." Sophia called the nurses' station once to ask about my condition, but said she was out of town and couldn't come. Daniel sent flowers with a card signed by his assistant. When I was discharged, it was Dorothy who drove me home and stayed to make sure I was settled. As I recovered in the quiet of my home, something crystallized within me. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I remembered who I was before I became consumed by my children's needs and demands. I remembered the capable nurse who had handled emergencies with calm efficiency. The woman who had managed a household, a career, and 3 children while her husband traveled. The partner who had stood strong when Harold was diagnosed with cancer, becoming his advocate and caregiver. That woman was still inside me, and she had finally reached her limit. I realized that my enabling behavior wasn't actually helping my children. By continually rescuing them financially, by accepting their emotional neglect, I was allowing them to remain stunted, never growing into the responsible, caring adults they should be. My love had become harmful, not helpful. Over the next week, I developed a detailed plan. It would be difficult. It would likely damage our relationships, possibly permanently. But continuing as we were wasn't an option. Something had to change, and since my children showed no signs of changing their behavior, it had to be me. I made an appointment with an attorney specializing in elder law. I brought all my financial records, Harold's letter, and a clear vision of what I wanted to do. The attorney, Miss Rivera, listened carefully to my plan. "This is unusual," she said when I finished explaining, "but legally sound. Are you certain this is the route you want to take? It will be difficult to undo once implemented." "I'm certain," I replied, my voice steady. "It's time for all of us to face reality." Over the next month, I worked with Miss Rivera to update my will, change my accounts document, all the loans my children had received, and put legal protections in place. I met with my pastor, Reverend Thomas, seeking spiritual guidance about my decision. "Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing harmful patterns to continue," he advised. "Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is establish boundaries." As my 70th year continued, I felt a strange combination of grief and liberation. Grief for the relationships I had thought existed with my children. Liberation in finally acknowledging the truth and taking action. By the time I finalized my plan, I was at peace with my decision. Whatever came next, I would face it with the strength Harold knew I possessed. With legal counsel from Miss Rivera, I began the methodical process of documenting every financial transaction between myself and my children since Harold's death. Bank statements, check images, wire transfers, cash withdrawals noted in my records all became evidence of a troubling pattern. For Jackson, the total came to $68,400 across 12 separate loans. Private school tuition for Lily and Thomas. a boat he couldn't afford but insisted would help him entertain clients, assistance with their kitchen renovation, money toward his luxury car when his old one was projecting the wrong image to clients. Sophia had received $59,200. Beyond the divorce attorney fees, there had been the down payment on her condo designer furniture because, Mom, I can't bring clients to an empty apartment, Emma's expensive summer camps, and a temporary help with credit card debt that somehow never improved despite her six-figure salary. Daniel had taken the most $87,300, all for business ventures with grandiose names and promises, revolutionary apps that would change the way people communicate, investment opportunities that were guaranteed returns, technology patents that would make us all millionaires. None had materialized into anything substantial. With Miss Rivera's help, I drafted legal documents transforming these loans into documented obligations. Not that I expected repayment, but the documentation would be important for what came next. I spent a week reorganizing my financial life. First, I met with representatives at 3 different banks to set up new accounts. My retirement funds were moved into protected trusts that could only be used for my care and living expenses. I closed all joint accounts that had existed since the children were teenagers, accounts they had increasingly treated as extensions of their own finances. The most difficult part was removing my children as beneficiaries on my accounts and insurance policies. It felt like the ultimate maternal betrayal, and I wept after signing the paperwork. But I reminded myself of Harold's words. This wasn't about punishment. It was about fostering independence and respect. I kept meticulous digital evidence of my children's patterns of behavior, screenshots of ignored text messages, logs of unreturned phone calls, records of canceled visits, their social media posts on days they claimed to be too busy to check on me. It was painful to compile but necessary for my own resolve. Using spreadsheet skills I had learned for hospital inventory management, I created detailed accountings for each child, every dollar given with dates, purposes, and promises made. Next to each entry, I noted what had actually happened with the money and whether any repayment had occurred. The visualization of the pattern was stark and undeniable. I wrote individual letters to each of my children. Not accusations or angry diatribes, but honest assessments of our relationships. I described my feelings when they forgot my birthday while posting online all day. I detailed the history of our interactions since their father died. I explained how their behavior had affected me emotionally and financially. Most importantly, I expressed that despite everything, I loved them and wanted a relationship with them, but one based on mutual respect, not exploitation. The next phase of my plan required the most courage. I transferred the remaining accessible funds from my daily checking and savings accounts into a new temporary account. To anyone checking, including my financially savvy children, it would appear that I still had substantial money available. In reality, the bulk of my assets had been secured in protected trusts. I set up my online banking so that each of my children still had the emergency access they had insisted on after Harold died. This access, which they had used repeatedly for non-emergencies, would now serve a different purpose. For each child, I prepared what I called a freedom gift, a small, elegantly wrapped box. Inside each was an empty bank statement showing 0 funds in the accessible account, along with a personalized note, "My gift to you. Freedom from expectations. Freedom from obligation. Freedom to build your own life without using me as a financial safety net. Freedom to decide what kind of relationship we have moving forward." As the months passed and my next birthday approached, I secured my home and possessions. The house was placed in a protected trust with strict terms about its use and eventual sale. Family heirlooms and valuables were cataloged and stored securely, some with provisions in my updated will, others simply protected from impulsive decisions or demands. Throughout this process, I continued therapy sessions with Dr. Marshall, who had helped me work through my grief after Harold's death. Now she helped me prepare for the potentially explosive fallout of my plan. We role-played difficult conversations. We discussed maintaining boundaries in the face of emotional manipulation. We worked on my tendency to cave under pressure from my children. I also built a stronger support network beyond my family. I reconnected with nursing colleagues. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered at a local senior center. I deepened my friendship with Dorothy and Frank. I created a life full enough that my children's absence, while painful, was not devastating. As May approached again and my 71st birthday neared, I confirmed my preparations one final time. Everything was in place. The timing was deliberate and symbolic, exactly 1 year after they had forgotten the milestone birthday that had opened my eyes to the true nature of our relationships. I was ready. On the morning of my 71st birthday, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet as I made my way to the kitchen to prepare a cup of tea. I sat at my table watching the sunrise through the east-facing window and took time to center myself through meditation, a practice I had adopted in the past year. "I am strong enough for this," I whispered to myself, echoing Harold's words from his letter. "I am doing this with love, not vengeance." At exactly 9 o'clock, I called my bank and authorized the final transfers that would empty the accessible account my children occasionally monitored. The money wasn't gone, of course, just moved to my secured accounts. But to anyone checking, it would appear that my finances had suddenly been wiped out. Then I waited. I knew it wouldn't take long. My children rarely checked on my well-being, but they regularly checked on my bank balance. Jackson discovered it first. His financial advisory firm had an app that allowed him to monitor multiple accounts, including mine. At 10:17, my phone rang with his number. "Mom." His voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "I just got a notification about your account. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, Jackson," I said calmly. "Is there something you needed? What happened to all your money?" The pretense dropped immediately. Not, "Are you okay?" or "Happy birthday." Just concern for the money. "I've made some financial changes," I replied. "Is there something specific you needed from that account?" He stammered, then admitted the truth. He had scheduled an automatic withdrawal of $3,000 for that morning to cover his mortgage payment. "Just temporarily," he assured me. "Things are tight this month, with Lily's college tours." I was going to tell you about it. No, he wasn't. He had grown accustomed to treating my account as an extension of his own. The withdrawal would have happened without my knowledge, as had occurred several times before. "Your withdrawal was rejected," I said. "You'll need to make other arrangements for your mortgage." Before he could respond, I told him a courier would be delivering something to him later that day and ended the call. Sophia discovered the change about an hour later. Unlike Jackson's call, her communication came in the form of a barrage of text messages. "Mom, what happened to your account? Why is there no money there? I need to transfer money today for Emma's school trip. Are you having problems with the bank? This is an emergency." I noticed she didn't mention it was my birthday either. And her emergency was a school trip that had been planned for months, plenty of time to budget properly for a non-essential expense. I texted back a simple response: "No banking problems. Financial reorganization. Courier will deliver explanation today." Daniel took the most direct approach. He appeared at my door unannounced shortly after noon, something he hadn't done in over a year despite living just 30 minutes away. When I opened the door, his expression was thunderous. "What did you do with my money?" were his first words. Not a greeting, not a birthday wish. My money. He had already made the mental leap of ownership. "Hello, Daniel," I said, remaining in the doorway, not inviting him in. "I don't have any of your money. Every dollar you've earned is still yours." "You know what I mean," he snapped. "The money in your accounts. I was counting on that transfer we discussed." We had discussed no transfer. He had mentioned a ground floor opportunity in a tech venture 3 weeks earlier, and I had non-committally said I would think about it. In his mind, that translated to an agreed-upon investment. "There will be no transfer," I said firmly. "And we need to talk about our relationship, but not right now. A courier will bring you something today that explains everything." He tried to push past me into the house, but I stood my ground. "I'm not discussing this further right now, Daniel. Please leave." For the first time in his adult life, I saw genuine shock on his face as he realized I wasn't yielding. He retreated to his car, looking back at me with confusion and anger. By 3 o'clock, all 3 children had received their Freedom gift boxes, delivered by courier. Inside each was the empty account statement, my letter, explaining my decision, and an itemized list of every dollar they had taken from me since their father's death. My phone exploded with calls and texts. I let them go to voicemail. This was a moment that required face-to-face conversation, not reactive exchanges over devices. In my final letter, I had invited them to a family meeting at my house that evening, at 7 o'clock. If you wish to understand what has happened and discuss our future relationship, be there. If money is your only concern, don't bother coming. At 7 sharp, all three arrived, something that hadn't happened simultaneously in years. They sat stiffly in my living room, a united front of entitlement and indignation. "Before you speak," I said, holding up my hand as Jackson opened his mouth, "I want you to know that today is my birthday, my 71st birthday. Just like last year, none of you acknowledged it. That tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in your lives." Sophia had the grace to look ashamed. The men just looked annoyed at the perceived guilt trip. "Mom, we're not here about your birthday," Jackson said. "We need to understand what's going on with your money. Our money. Dad would have wanted us to have access to family funds for emergencies." "This isn't about money," I replied. "It's about respect and the relationship we have, or don't have." For the next hour, I calmly presented the evidence I had compiled. The forgotten birthdays and holidays, the unanswered calls, the broken promises to visit, the social media posts showing they had time for everything and everyone except me. Then I turned to the financial exploitation. I showed them the full accounting of every dollar they had taken with dates and false promises of repayment. I showed them my hospital records from when I had collapsed from stress and their minimal responses to my hospitalization. "Between the three of you, you have taken $214,900 from me in just 3 years," I said. "Money your father and I saved over decades of hard work. Money meant to sustain me in my old age." "Those were loans," Daniel protested weakly. "Investments. I'm going to pay you back when my business takes off." "Were they loans?" I asked, pushing the signed documentation toward him. "Because loans have repayment terms. Loans have interest. Loans aren't taken from your mother while ignoring her calls." "This is ridiculous," Jackson said, though his confidence was clearly shaken by the meticulous records before him. "We're family. Family helps each other." "Yes, family helps each other," I agreed. "When did any of you last help me? When did you last call just to check on me? When did you last invite me to dinner or bring your children to visit their grandmother? When did any of you give anything to this relationship beyond taking?" The room fell silent. The carefully constructed narrative they had built, the one where they were loving children, dealing with a needy mother, was crumbling under the weight of documented reality. "So what now?" Sophia finally asked, her voice small. "You've cut us off completely." "I've protected what remains of my financial security," I corrected her. "And I've given you all the freedom to be the adults you are. Freedom from using me as your personal bank. Freedom to decide what kind of relationship we want, based on love and respect, not financial benefit." "And if we need help?" Daniel asked. "You're all educated, employed adults with good incomes," I replied. "If you need financial help, there are banks. If you need emotional support, I am here as I've always been. But those two things are no longer connected." They left subdued, the united front fractured, as each confronted their individual role in what had happened. I knew this wasn't the end. There would be anger, perhaps attempts at manipulation or reconciliation. But for the first time in years, I went to bed on my birthday feeling like I had given myself the gift I truly needed: self-respect. The immediate aftermath was exactly as Dr. Marshall and I had anticipated. For 2 weeks, my phone was bombarded with messages ranging from angry accusations to tearful pleas. Jackson threatened legal action, claiming I was mentally incompetent and had been manipulated by whoever is giving you this terrible advice. Sophia vacillated between rage and guilt, tripping one moment telling me I was dead to her, and the next asking, "How could you do this to your own daughter who loves you?" Daniel tried a different approach, sending business proposals and guarantees of enormous returns if I would just loan him money one more time. I maintained my position with a calm I didn't always feel. To Jackson's legal threats, I provided documentation from my doctor confirming my mental competence. To Sophia's emotional manipulation, I responded with brief, kind, but firm messages reiterating my boundaries. To Daniel's continued financial requests, I simply didn't respond. Dr. Marshall had prepared me for the hardest part, the silence that might follow when they realized their tactics weren't working. "They may need time to process that the dynamic has permanently changed," she had warned. That could mean a period of no contact. The silence came after about a month. All calls and messages stopped abruptly. Social media showed they were continuing their lives without interruption. I felt the loss acutely questioning my decision during lonely evenings. But I reminded myself that what I missed wasn't what actually existed, but what I had hoped existed. The relationship I mourned had been gone long before my financial stand, if it had ever been there at all. The first crack in the wall of silence came from an unexpected source. Amanda Jackson's wife called me 6 weeks after the confrontation. "Heidi," she said, her voice hesitant, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from." "That's not true, Amanda," I replied. "Your family, too." I knew she confessed, her voice breaking. "I knew what Jackson was doing, taking money from you while complaining about having to call you. I told myself, it wasn't my place to interfere. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." Her honesty was refreshing after months of denial and deflection from my children. We talked for an hour. She shared that my actions had forced Jackson to face some uncomfortable truths about himself, though he was still angry and hurt. I told her I understood his feelings but couldn't continue as things had been. Before hanging up, she promised that regardless of what happened between me and Jackson, she would make sure my grandchildren maintained a relationship with me. True to her word, the following weekend, my granddaughter Lily showed up at my door. At 17, she was on the cusp of adulthood herself, thoughtful and perceptive. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," she admitted as we sat in my kitchen eating cookies. "But Grandma, what you did was badass. They've been taking advantage of you for years." I had to laugh at her characterization. "It doesn't feel very badass to potentially lose your children," I admitted. "You haven't lost us grandkids," she assured me. "And maybe this will finally make them grow up." Lily's visit was the first healing stitch in the torn fabric of our family. She came regularly after that sometimes, bringing her younger brother Thomas. Through them, I stayed connected to at least part of Jackson's life, hearing about school events and family dinners in which I wasn't included. 6 months after my stand, I received a letter from Sophia. Not an email or text, but a handwritten letter on proper stationery, something I hadn't seen from her in years. "Mom," she wrote, "I've spent months being angry with you, but the truth is I'm ashamed. When I saw that list of all the money I'd taken, money you and Dad saved through years of hard work, I couldn't face it. I've been living beyond my means and using you as my safety net without considering what that meant for you. Even worse, I've been neglecting our relationship when it didn't benefit me financially. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm working with a financial counselor now. I'm taking responsibility for my choices, and I miss you. Not your money, you." We began rebuilding our relationship slowly, coffee once a week, honest conversations about how we had arrived at such a broken place, her acknowledgement of her sense of entitlement, my acknowledgement of my enabling behavior. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was real in a way our interactions hadn't been in years. Daniel's reckoning came through necessity rather than choice. His latest business venture failed spectacularly 3 months after I cut off funding. Without my financial backstop, he had been forced to take on investors who demanded actual results rather than just promising narratives. When those results didn't materialize, he lost everything, including his fancy car and the downtown loft he couldn't actually afford. He showed up at my door one evening, humbled in a way I had never seen him. "I don't want anything," were his first words. "I just need to talk." Over cups of tea, my youngest child finally faced reality. "I've been living in a fantasy world," he admitted, "telling myself I was a successful entrepreneur when really I was just burning through your retirement savings on half-baked ideas. Dad would be so disappointed in me." "Your father would be proud of you for recognizing the truth," I told him. "That's the first step to changing it." In the months that followed, Daniel moved in with a friend, got an entry-level job at a legitimate tech company, and began the slow process of building a career based on actual work rather than grandiose schemes. Our relationship improved as he took responsibility for himself, calling regularly not to ask for money but just to check in. Jackson was the last to come around. His pride had been deeply wounded, both by my public accounting of his exploitation and by the fact that his teenage daughter had sided with me. It took a series of therapy sessions, first with him alone, then with all of us together, before we could even begin to communicate effectively. "I convinced myself I was entitled to your money," he finally admitted during our 4th session, "that I deserved it for being a good son, even though I wasn't actually being one. When you cut me off, it felt like rejection, but it was really just you refusing to be used anymore. A year after my 71st birthday, we celebrated my 72nd with a small gathering at my home. Not the whole family yet, that wound was still healing, but those who had made genuine efforts to rebuild relationships: Sophia and Emma, Daniel, Amanda, and the grandkids. Jackson came for dessert, still uncomfortable but trying. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments and old patterns that threatened to reassert themselves, but there was also laughter, genuine conversation, and a foundation of honesty that had been missing for years. Beyond my family, I found new purpose in the experience. I began volunteering at a senior center, leading workshops on financial security for older adults. I shared my story, helping others recognize signs of financial exploitation by family members and find the courage to establish boundaries. What had been a source of shame became a way to help others facing similar situations. As I look back now, I realize that the painful journey of the past 2 years gave me an unexpected gift. By standing up for myself, by refusing to be a resource rather than a person, I gave my children the opportunity to become better people. Some parents leave their children money. I gave mine the chance to develop character, to learn respect, to understand that love isn't measured in dollars but in consideration and care. They remember my birthday now, not because they're afraid I'll empty bank accounts again, but because they've learned painfully, but necessarily, to see me as a person worthy of remembrance. Our relationships are still healing, still evolving, but they're based on something real now, not the transactional exchanges that had replaced genuine connection. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give those you love is the chance to become better people, even when it hurts. The question isn't whether your family will disappoint you, it's what you'll do when they do. Will you enable behavior that harms both of you, or will you find the strength to insist on better, too? I chose the harder path, and while I wouldn't wish the pain of it on anyone, I don't regret my choice. If you've ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from family members, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to establish hard boundaries with loved ones? How did it work out? Don't forget to subscribe and share this video if my story resonated with you. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for others is to stop allowing them to take advantage of us. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that it's never too late to stand up for yourself.